Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a realm where reality intertwines with the inexplicable, where the boundaries of reason dissolve into the shadows of uncertainty. Welcome to the political twilight zone. I am your guide through this enigmatic labyrinth, where politics and power take on life of their own. In this dimension, the threads of truth weave a tapestry of intrigue, challenging our perception of the world we thought we knew. In this world, nothing is as it seems, and the truth lies buried beneath layers of deceit. Prepare to venture where reason meets the unexplained, and where the unexplained might just be.
Hi, everybody. Another week in what's still arguably the greatest nation in the world. We're working hard to keep it that way. It's an uphill fight, I have to say. Hope you guys had a good week. Got a little decent weather where I'm at right now, so I appreciate that. I'm just hoping it stays decent and doesn't, overnight turn to 100, which it has had a tendency to do sometimes. But I welcome you back, and please, keep listening. We appreciate it a lot. We're at KNZZ 1192.7 and KGLN at our good old 9080 and 101.3. And, of course, we're a lot of other places, too. And we're also on the internets that you can get it right now by tuning into KNZZ's internet connection. And, of course, you can go get our podcast about any place you want, which is... usually through Podbean or through, I think you can get it on Spotify and iTunes, and that just ask for The Rick Wagner Show, and that should do it. Anyway, so let's start off with something today that I just couldn't wait to talk about it because it was so funny. Funny in a way that makes us think, okay? I understand why we're not, time isn't all that funny, but we need to laugh a little bit. This is the Daily Wire had a story that NBC, that would be the National Broadcasting Company, corporation actually, to promote I can't talk, promote LGBTQI. I'm not sure what the I plus means. I need to look that up. Q, I guess, is questioning, and I don't know. The plus just seems like, I don't know, like, is it like firearms? So you have plus P ammunition? Are you, if you're one of the other letters, does the plus make you, are you just more that way? I don't know. It's getting very confusing. Anyway, they're going to promote this tolerance by bombarding audiences with gay animal sex. See, just when you thought they couldn't come up with something else, another way to approach the plans. Yeah. So, according to an article published on Thursday by IndieWire, Queer Planet will be available to stream via NBC Universal's Peacock on June 6th, as part of the network's celebration of Pride Month. Well, it's about time to let the animal kingdom in on this. These guys, they haven't got the recognition they deserve. Let's see. I'm looking at a picture of two male lions. I won't describe what they're doing or alleged to be doing. No, I'm not making this up, by the way. You can look at the story. We've all heard of gay penguins, but this film opened my eyes to the full spectrum of LGBTQ plus behaviors. Oh, he left the I out. Oh. Across the natural world. Narrator Andrew Reynolds tells us in a press statement, and what could be more natural than being who you are? I'm excited to be part of Queer Planet, especially during Pride Month, and on Peacock, surely the most colorful and glamorous of all the streaming services. Yee. Feature documentary, according to IndieWire, will feature a number of different hidden LGBTQ plus. Once again, they left the I out again. Communities among animals. Oh, do they have meetings? Do they have meetings, flags? Do they hold protests? Oh, we don't know. Maybe we'll find out in this special. How about that? That have unconventional sexualities and genders. Now, I thought some of this was just natural. I guess unconventional, maybe that isn't what that means. We'll feature everything from the aforementioned gay penguins to a number of other communities. I'm sorry, this is just too much for me. The word has to go out. Here's the synopsis of it. The rich diversity of animal sexuality, from flamboyant flamingos to pansexual primates, sex-changing clownfish to multi-gendered mushrooms, and everything in between. This documentary looks at extraordinary creatures, witnessing amazing behaviors, and introduces the scientists questioning the traditional concept of what's natural when it comes to sex and gender. Well, I'll tell you what it does for me. It has making me question the concept of television and educational television, documentaries, so-called documentaries, and letting pretty much anybody under the age of 21 watch them because they're just out of control here, apparently. I mean, come on. Here's what I think. Multi-gendered mushrooms. Let's think about that one for a minute. Multi-gendered mushrooms. See, mushrooms, and botany is not my thing. Some of the other sciences I can kind of work around, but botany, I'm really, if you guys have a garden or orchard or something like that, don't let me near it. I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm just going to go out here and say that I think what that means is that the generation of the spores that create the mushrooms does not require two different definable sexes as we would think of it. Now, when you got to get down to spores, I think that you're probably really reaching a bit. But the other one that I would like an explanation on, I've tried to figure out what pansexual means. Pansexual primates. Is that just because it sounds some alliteration? Is that what that means? Because I kind of wonder if they had a pansexual primate. And I've never quite understood what that's supposed to mean. So I've looked this up for you too, because I need to know. This is from Medical News Today. I don't know if it was actually put up today. Actually, it looks like it was put up the end of September. Let's see. Oh, there's a disclaimer that, these may not be the thing that everybody agrees with. Oh, this one is even better. This has sexual, romantic, and gender identities that come from LGBTQIA+. So there's even more letters. I don't know what they stand for. How is it important to note that these identities are personal and people may define them differently? Well, if they define them differently, how can we know what it means? This is like the story I tell people all the time. When I went to a restaurant one time and I ordered a Caesar salad, and it came and it had cilantro on it and a couple other things. And it didn't taste anything like a Caesar salad. So I asked them, I said, did I get the Caesar salad? They go, oh, yes. I said, well, it's very different. It goes, oh, that's our version of a Caesar salad. No, it's not. It's something else. If you go get a grilled cheese sandwich and they bring you a ungrilled sandwich with a slice of bologna on it, that's not their version of a grilled cheese sandwich. Right? I mean, things actually have definitions. That's always stuck with me because I was trying not to not be a problem, but I did say that's not a version. Okay. A version, I would think you get away with some slight version, like maybe a substitution for something similar, like maybe, the really good guys that do these, these kind of salads that do that. They take an anchovy and they smear it around in a wooden bowl, and then they prepare the Caesar salad because you don't want the anchovy in there. You just want the hint of the flavor. So maybe they would swap that out or take it out. That's variation. But, just giving you something else and calling it that, sort of like, giving you the grilled cheese sandwich when you ordered a hamburger. What about that? Is that their version? Sorry to get off track. Here's what we get. Bisexual and pansexuality are both terms that people may use to describe sexual orientation. Oh, yeah, so you're not helping at all here. Generally, bisexual refers to attraction to more than one gender. Well, I think there's just two, but, I'm so old-fashioned. People may define pansexuality as an attraction regardless of gender. Oh, come on. That's regardless of gender? What does that even mean? So we have two genders. How's that different? Oh, I see. Because we have many genders now. Or many takes on genders. So that must be what that is. Many different sorts of sexual orientations exist. Okay. But there are also gender identities. I don't think so. I think gender and sexual orientation, I could make a good argument, that are not the same thing. One is a biological imperative, and the other is, a decision that you make in a gender studies class, usually at one of the East Coast colleges. But so that's what that means. I'm not sure that helps us out, folks. Sorry I wasn't more informative on that. We'll try and zoom in on these issues a little more informatively in the next segment. All right. We're just trying to back here again, trying to make some sense out of this here at Getting It Right. with Rick Wagner. We're trying to get it right. Sometimes it's hard to understand what the question is. I got to say, I was a little thrown off by those definitions there, bisexual, pansexual, and a couple of the last letters. Some of them, after they get to the TQ and the LGBTQ, they're adding an A and an I, and I haven't been able to quite figure out what those are. The plus, I guess, just means really, like I said, plus P ammunition, like powerful, a little more powerful than the usual 38 special or something, right? That's all I can relate it to. Anyway, so let's take a look here at something happening in Colorado that you may not be aware of. Those of you not in Colorado might want to be aware of it too, because it's probably happening near you. No one's telling you, though. There's a middle school in Colorado, they say. This is from the Daily Signal. Well, I happen to know where the middle school is. It's in Greenwood Village. It's a part of the Cherry Creek School District, and it's called Campus Middle School. And on April 19th, they required staff to show a video and distribute worksheets and a list of activities encouraging students to participate in the LGBTQ plus Day of Silence. Am I getting what a day of silence means? Because this sounds like they're supposed to be talking and doing all sorts of things. I thought a day of silence just was like, silence. I'm really getting at it. The language is really getting ahead of me, apparently. Campus Middle School is part of the Cherry Creek School District. Yeah, it has 53,000 students. The Day of Silence was created by LGBTQ activists. Participants are encouraged to remain silent for the day, in solidarity with those whom activists claims are bullied, marginalized, and harassed for being gay, bisexual, non-binary, transgender, or other sexual expression that became trendy in the past decade. That was a little bit of that was editorializing for the Daily Sentinel. And a week before this went out, they have an administrator there who was sent this out. I'm trying to figure out what he does. He's the school sponsor of the Spectrum Club. That must be the extracurricular group. And also, the Spectrum Club advisors told teachers to let students refrain from speaking in class unless absolutely necessary. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Parents weren't notified at all. Yeah, there you go. I'm sorry, I just scanning through this. It's just stuff that you just never thought you would see, right? Barry Sterling, who's described on their website as an instructional coach, yearbook advisor, and spectrum advisor. What does any of that mean? Yearbook advisor, I guess, we used to have those. One of the regular teachers would, help out with the yearbook. But, instructional coach? Isn't pretty much everybody at school supposed to, at some level, be instructing something? What do you mean instructional coach? Do you have a whistle and those tight shorts and you follow other teachers around and force them to do push-ups when they don't teach properly? I don't know. Spectrum advisor, is this a full-time job? Instructional coach, yearbook advisor, and spectrum advisor. He must have some time on his hands because he sent in an email instructing campus middle school faculty to show a video to students during a daily advisory period, 18 minutes during which students meet with a school advisor or counselor. Okay. One of the things they show is a video of an a cappella group called Pentatonics, and they're actually pretty good. It's pretty. I've seen their stuff before. A cappella is difficult, and when it's done well, it's really kind of fascinating. So they aren't very good at it, but this apparently was them singing John Lennon's Imagine, and then they're encouraging them to either be silent or make signs or something. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what this is supposed to be, and here's the funny part of it. Well, the whole thing's pretty funny. This is a video, email, and slide. This is a slide from the campus middle school provided to this was provided to the Daily Signal by the Colorado Parent Advisory Network, who apparently found out about this. And it says, what is the Day of Silence? A Day of Silence is a student-led national event where students choose to remain silent to bring attention to name-calling, bullying, and harassment due to issues regarding race, religion, gender, and sexual orientation. How is, we just went all through this stuff that's coming through the administration, right? going to show videos. They have to do this. They have to do that. How is this a student-led national event? Does that sound like a student-led event to you? Of course it doesn't. This is all orchestrated by the administration at some level, and then disseminated by people like this other dude, the instructional coach, your book advisor, I don't know, Spectrum advisor. And so this is not a student-led thing. We have enough student-led problems in our colleges that we need to encourage students to start coming up with their own weird stuff when they're in middle school. So I guess to get around that, they just impose it on them. It's interesting that the parents were not brought in on this. Well, is it interesting? Are we surprised? What they're complaining about, some of the parents are complaining about, that they're hiding this activism from them, right? And many of these places are concerned that as we see our literacy and math performance drop down, sometimes it's further than it's been in decades, there's an increasing proportion of the school day, the lessons are supposed to be on the virtues of racial and gender segregation, and it's kind of what it is to some extent. There's only 180 school days per year, depending on your school district, and 8 hours per day. Yeah, I don't think a lot of kids are in school 8 hours a day, but out of that, they're getting a lot of time eaten up by this nonsense. And it is nonsense because let's say they want to explore these topics. That's all fine. But rather than giving them the tools to really explore these topics effectively, things like being able to read well, reasoning, being exposed to a lot of different ideas, trying to employ some sort of logical analysis to see what they agree with and what they think is true. Instead of developing any of those skills, they just want to pipe this stuff into them. And of course, if you don't have those skills, it makes it a lot easier to pipe those things into you. So I think the reasons for some of this are clear. A docile, not particularly well-educated population is much easier to manage with stuff like this because people don't stand up and say, I don't think that's right. My experience, I wasn't taught that. Well, pretty soon everybody's going to be taught something that we're going to be a little surprised at. A little game you might play, if you're interested, is you and some friends could take out a sheet of paper and each of you could write down 5 things that are controversial, that no one thought was controversial or thought much about in 2000. Say 2000. That's almost a generation. We think a generation's around 25 years, right? So write some of those down. Each one of you write your own things down, watch your own paper. And I'd be interested, guys, to compare them. Now, there's going to be a couple I know they're going to show all over. Everybody's going to have those on there. But it's going to make you think about how many things like this that we couldn't imagine would be a problem 24 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago. These are problems that are, they're solutions, I think, trying to find a problem. Because we don't seem to have as many problems as we have forced solutions. You remember, that's one of the worst things you can do to somebody, is make them perform something that they don't think is true or that is useless. And to force them to do something like that, just as an exercise in power, apparently, seems to me to be even worse because of the motivation. But yeah, think about how many things. And really, you should give yourself some time. If you know how it is. If you're just sitting there and you have 2 minutes at the breakfast table, that's not enough. You need to carry your little notebook around for the day. And as things come up, write things down that you knew that 20, 22 years ago, nobody thought was going to be a crisis or that there was going to be a debate about it. It's like Douglas Murray likes to say, is that we're arguing about things that literally a couple of years ago everybody thought they agreed on or didn't think about in the same way. Now we act as though they have been constant problems of enormous, concern for decades. This is not the case. these guys comparing themselves to the civil rights movement is just bizarre. I mean, these guys just landed on the planet practically, and already they're, comparing themselves to things that were poorly done to people for thousands of years and trying to get that stopped. So these are new. These are new ideas that are takes kind of on old memes, right? If you want to say memes. If you go back historically, like we often do, and you look at what happens to very affluent civilizations when they're getting ready to, start going down the drain, they're starting the spiral. A lot of this kind of stuff comes up because it's a function of the luxus, right? The Romans' words. The love of luxury, the too much free time, the incapable of being understanding labor and having to strive for things. We'll be back. Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking around again here. Rick Wagner still getting it right. Yeah, we are. We're heading out looking for adventure, a good adventure. Remember, be careful what you ask for, because an adventure covers a broad range of problems and issues out there. Some of them are fun and exciting. Some of them just you'd rather forgo the adventure if you could. So let's try and mold everything to a way where it has at least a positive outcome, huh? So I was just looking here at all the stuff we've been talking about today, and of course, the Trump trial was on hiatus. They took Friday off. It wouldn't work too hard when you're persecuting somebody without mercy over nothing. It takes it out of you. You need some rest. So they got that, and they're going to drag Michael Cohen back up on the stand on Monday, where they can yet again demonstrate what a horrific liar he is, and not a very good one, I might add, and not a particularly smart guy, if you get right down to it. Once again, you know what all the pointy heads on television and stuff talk about, especially on the right, on Fox and so forth. Well, his credibility's so bad. He's done this. They eviscerated him, and even people on CNN like Anderson Cooper and some other folks, analysts on MSNBC, thought that, oh my gosh, this guy's terrible. He's hurting their case. First, you have to stop and realize this case isn't about the case. Not in New York and Manhattan with Alvin Bragg. This case isn't about a case. It's about Trump as a person. That's what makes it so bad. It isn't about the law and someone breaking it. It's about a man who they want to break with the law. Now, when you get that squared away, you realize that saying just because someone's a terrible witness in a place where the venue is chosen, the prosecutor is chosen, and probably to the best of their ability the jury was chosen, to not like Donald Trump. And I think not like is really, really a mild way to put it. So their point of view is that if you find the defendant to be Donald Trump, then you must find the defendant guilty. That's what they're looking for. That's the jury instruction they're trying to subtly push across the border there. It's not any of these really complex, but they're going to get some really crazy jury instructions in this too, because these charges are 70% made up. That is that they took some misdemeanor charges that exist out there that I don't believe applied to Trump at any rate and would have expired, 6-7 years ago. And, the statute of limitations would have ran out. And they've sort of hung this mess onto it by saying that, and this is hard to explain. When you see people on TV talking about it, it is hard to explain. And the fact that they're willing to go this pretzel logic route to get him in the courtroom with it shows you how sure they are that the trial will be about the man and not about the law. Because what they're trying to say is somehow this bookkeeping crime, which I don't believe they even have evidence of, was somehow manipulated to change the result or be part of an election scheme, even though the action they're talking about took place after the election. There's just nothing about these charges that make any kind of sense. If you're a juror sitting in there, you can't have any idea about what's going on. I mean, there's a couple lawyers on there, software engineer, 2 or 3 other people, because this doesn't have anything to do with trying to understand what's going on. There's only one thing going on. It's trying to prove Donald Trump is Donald Trump, and you got to put a stop to that. All this other stuff is just more confusing. I would be interested to the jury instructions are, because you know what jury instructions are supposed to do? First, they're supposed to instruct you on how the jury is supposed to reach conclusions, how it's supposed to meet, how it's supposed to discuss things, how it's supposed to consider the items. Then, it lays out the law that the charges are based upon. And then the jury is supposed to apply the facts as they know them to that law into the mental state that you have to break the law, as well as the actions you take while under that mental state to be guilty of breaking that law. Yeah, that's a little easier when you're trying somebody for burglary or robbery or things of that nature. Something like this, I don't think if you backed Alvin Bragg in a corner, and it would have to be a pretty big corner, I might add, because Alvin's kind of wide dude. I don't think you could explain what the mens rea, in other words, the mental attitude that was necessary to prosecute this was, and what the law directly is that they're trying to talk about, and then what actions that he must have knowingly taken. Remember, there's not a lot of laws out there, criminal laws, that are strict liability. Strict liability pretty much means that you don't have to have the requisite mental state to do it. For instance, this is one that gets used all the time, driving under the influence. DUI, driving drunk is a better way to put it. The prosecution doesn't have to prove that you meant to get drunk, or even that you should have known you were going to get drunk. The fact is that you were drunk. And when you're drunk, you shouldn't be driving. Now, I think the middle one in there, that you know you're going to get drunk, probably is happening anyway because you feel yourself getting drunk. That doesn't usually happen instantaneously. But nevertheless, it's a strict liability crime. There's very few of those. Almost all of them have some necessity of a mental state that goes into them. Most of the time, that mental state is knowingly, willingly, or a planned situation, which is a specific intent crime. Knowingly is the kind of idea, well, there's recklessly too. Knowingly is engaging in an activity that you, or a reasonable person, would know was going to result in a certain outcome. Recklessly is engaging in a endeavor that has a substantial probability that a regular person would know, a reasonable person, would be dangerous or create a certain situation, but disregarding that. So it's a little lower than the knowing. A specific intent crime is just that. In order to get there, you must have to specifically intend to have what happened happen. This is where we get with first-degree murder and things like that, is that there's a planning process usually in it. Now, how long before the actual crime is committed that the planning has to take place is sort of situational. But those are the kind of ideas. I don't think there's any way in the world they can reach any kind of mental state in what they're trying to hang on Donald Trump. None of it would make any sense. There's no way he could have been intending to do X, Y, and Z at the time he supposedly did them. And then there's all this trash coming in the courtroom. Stormy Daniels has no reason to testify. None. She doesn't have a direct knowledge of what they're talking about. This is a business records trial. And then about what was done, with the money and how it was classified. The fact that she supposedly got the money for supposedly doing something or refraining from doing something doesn't matter. She was just an irrelevant piece of the action. But of course, they wanted them in. And by they, of course, you mean people on the prosecution side wanted her to be in there because they wanted to make him seem like a bad guy. And they wanted her to say that because a lot of what she would say, he could not refute except by saying that didn't happen. Well, the jury's already heard it. And they already don't like you, right? This is the thinking on the other side. So they're going to want to believe it. So they're going to want to believe that you're just a bad person, just a terrible person. And, as a terrible person, You deserve to be punished for something, right? If not this, then something else. This is precisely the reason that you don't allow that kind of evidence in. Prior bad acts, as they like to say, are very difficult to get into evidence. You really have to be able to show, it's called 404 evidence, that's a rule of evidence, but you have to show usually that some of these bad acts that are not the act you're prosecuting the person for are some sort of common scheme or plan. In other words, that you can show that they've done this before, and by doing these exact things, it's led up to the same thing they're doing now. And you have to show that pretty particularly. And lots of times, I haven't been able to get that into evidence, even though I thought it was pretty apparent, because it's a very, very dicey ground for the appellate courts. They don't like seeing it. So even if it arguably makes pretty good sense, lots of times so we say the error on the side of safety for the trial court is to not let it in so that it doesn't get struck down and they have to retry the case. Now, you only have to retry the case if the person's found guilty. This is the other part that sometimes people forget, is that in our system, double jeopardy system, if you're tried for something and found not guilty, it doesn't matter what kind of mistakes were made, because they don't get to try you again. You may appeal it to get some answers on the question of law if it's applicable. That's kind of difficult, but it can be. But the prosecution doesn't get another bite of that apple. If the jury found him not guilty, and there's a lot of screw-ups in there, that's just too bad. We don't got to keep retrying people over and over again. Some countries, that's not the case. Many countries, that's not the case. Ours, it is. So the only thing that gets a appeal that does anything good for the defendant is if he's found guilty and the appeal says mistakes were made. And here's what they are. And they were of such a size that they could have contributed to the wrong verdict or influenced the jury wrongly. Now, you don't have to be an appellate court judge or a judge or even a lawyer or somebody who's not drunk on grain alcohol to be able to see that there's none of that here. In other words, I should say there's all of that here. Probably what I should say is that there's almost nothing in this case that doesn't look like reversible error. The way they've treated the defendant, the way they have exacerbated all of this evidence that they've put in by extraneous evidence, evidence that has nothing to do with it, evidence that's calculated only to prejudice the jury against the defendant. By the way, that is an objection called more prejudicial than probative, right? In other words, it has more prejudice associated with harming the defendant than it goes towards settling a point of fact in the law. All of that's all over this place. So that's not what it's all about anyway. And so I, unlike some of the people, and I'm not so smart, but am still quite concerned about him getting convicted of something. Not because he did anything, or because the prosecution's come even close to proving anything, but because the charge against him is being Donald Trump. Now, it's not on the books, but that's what it is. And we see it in these other cases, too. That's why Donald Trump is moving forward in the polls. Because we're still cognizant enough of the ideas to realize that if they can do that to him, who can't they do it to? I mean, a system that goes south like this moves down quickly. They don't just do it to the big wigs. Pretty soon, it's the middle wigs, the little wigs, and the no wigs. Because the system just rots fast. I mean, it tumbles downhill. So it's more than about Donald Trump, and many people realize that. Also, it shows the hand of the other side, doesn't it? It shows you how they think. And that to them, there are no rules. Their only rules that are out there are the rules that they make up on the spot, which they can either enforce or bounce away from or whatever. And you see that in a lot of this other stuff, too. I mean, look at the attitude. Joe Biden is not fulfilling his oath of office by any stretch of the imagination. This isn't just some partisan things. I don't like Joe because he's a mean dude or some of the other weird stuff with him, but because his oath of office is to uphold and enforce the laws of the United States of America. He's not doing that. I mean, just the border. He is abrogating, refusing to enforce all the laws passed by Congress having to do with the border, pretty much. That's a violation of your oath. That is an impeachable offense. I don't like getting impeachable offenses because I don't want to see us turning our country upside down every few minutes like some of the banana republics do. But there has to be some kind of consequence. The problem is they turned this impeachment nonsense loose on Trump, and now if you try and do it on Biden, it looks like it's just tit for tat. What everybody worries about is just going to open up the barn door for every Congress to do it to every president. So that is understandable. But whether you think that it's a good idea to impeach him or not, you have the opportunity to get rid of him before an impeachment could even probably get all the way done. He can be removed in November. Well, at least he can be voted out in November. He's still got a couple of months in there to monkey around. Remember, originally, the president didn't take office until March. Think about that. You lose the election in November, and the new guy doesn't get there till March. That's a pretty long time. Now, we changed that because when that was written, was the idea that people just couldn't just pull up stakes from Virginia, Massachusetts, South Carolina, wherever they were at, and, get in their buggy and head to Washington, D.C. or Philadelphia and start the government up. It took a lot of time. They had to get there. They had to get, all their people in place. And, of course, they didn't have nearly the people we have now. We talked about before, all these administrative agencies and so forth. But because of travel and the ability to communicate, travel, and get people there, they gave them a lot of time. As that became less necessary, it became clear that you didn't want to have somebody being a lame duck, as it were, for that length of time. Now, we see what happens when you have a lame duck that's been there for 4 years. This is what we have now. We've sort of had that before when we had Woodrow Wilson. I mean, last year and a half, he was not functioning. There was no real press or anything on that, and so he had his health issues and stroke and this and that, and his wife Edith would just go in and tell people what he said. She was kind of the only person, apparently, that could understand him. He's having some speech difficulties, but she knew what he wanted. So, in effect, we had our sort of first prima facie female president at that time, it seems to me like. But now we have sort of, like I said, non compos mentis, not of sound mind for 4 years. And we don't really know who's running things. At least when you had Edith Wilson, you figured out, well, that's her. That's what she's saying. She's doing. You know what she's thinking about. Here we have all sorts of shadowy characters manipulating the sort of application of law. So we have our chance to get rid of this guy. And we have to also make sure that we give enough leverage in Congress so that when we put someone else in there, they're not just drugged down like by a bunch of wild hounds chasing them through the woods like there was with Trump last time. Some of that's difficult because everybody has a problem, it seems like, with somebody running for lower offices. Trump is actually managing to sort of weld together a lot of the Republican Party that was against him because of what they're doing to him. It's all blowing up in their face. But what polls are showing is that people are much more willing to vote for Trump, but then it gets down ticket, it starts getting a little mushy. Yeah, maybe a Republican, maybe a Democrat, I don't know. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of Republicans out there that aren't doing beans for what they're supposed to be doing. But in a situation like this, we've got to be able to at least hold the regulatory power of the House and the Senate. In other words, the committees. What comes before the committees, when the votes are taken. Look what's happening with Schumer. All of these things that happen in the House, assuming they actually get through that mess, just die in the Senate because he is the, what? Yeah, that's right. He's a Senate Majority Leader. And so he appoints all of the chairmen for all of the committees, and they can just let legislation just swing in the wind that comes up from the House. And that's what's happening. So we have to make sure that we keep going down ballot. And for those of you folks out there thinking about, what's coming up in municipal, school board, and those kinds of elections as well, you need to go up ballot too. Once again, I look at some of the municipalities around me, and I see some of the, what is that on the, how did that happen? Well, not paying attention is how that happened. Whenever you're thinking about a municipal election or something of that nature, just remember, and I know I've beat this into the ground, but I'll just keep saying it, that Joe Biden's first job, Wilmington City Council. Somebody would have derailed him there. I don't know what he would have done, actually. He really isn't capable of earning a living doing anything else. But I don't think he would have had a whole lot of political career ahead of him. Instead, we just kind of don't pay attention to these people until they get some constituency build up, or they get just name recognition from being around in public office, to the point that they get elected to something else. And if you're in some of these states that are one-party states, really one-party states, like, say, California, you end up with Kamala Harris, or Gavin Newsom, Adam Schiff, Maxine Waters. As if you just get on the escalator of the party and no one knocks you off, you just keep going up. Now that's a failure of the constituency. I'm sorry. Some of it can be forgiven. There are some constituencies that ask very little out of the representative because of the nature of it. What they're looking for is a representative that's going to get them stuff. I mean, at some level, everybody wants someone else to get them stuff. But some of them realize that government is now the bank, the employer, the source of life for them. And so they want somebody to represent them again to the government so they continue to get that. Not necessarily grow their society, but to get that kind of stuff. So you got to start looking past everything. We got to make sure we get rid of the very top and that we get the roots and yank them out.
Hi, folks. Thanks for listening. Listen, if you'd like to listen to more and you want to maybe perhaps have someone else listen to our podcast, you can do so either by going right to our webpage, politicalviking.com, or therickWagnerShow.com. Both of them take you there. You can get links right directly to our podcast, or you can hear our podcast on Podbean, on iTunes, and Spotify, and a couple others. So you can find us. We appreciate it if you do. And if you've heard the show, you want somebody else to hear it, that's a good way to send it to them. Thanks for listening.